Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about the history of the Babylonian Empire. But before we get into today's video, to those who are new to this channel, please feel free to click on the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you would be notified about the latest updates. So without any delay, let's get right into the video. Ancient records suggest that more than 4,000 years ago, at a time when the city of Ur, in what is now southern Iraq, it was the center of an empire, Babylon was a provincial administration center and was part of Ur's empire. Babylon was built in an area that's subject to very high temperatures and lies well beyond the reach of rain-fed agriculture. It was noted that an irrigation system that distributed water from the Euphrates was required to grow crops. The city of Babylon was located about 50 miles south of Baghdad along the Euphrates River. It was said that the prisoners who were captured in wars are sometimes forced to help build the canal network in the region. After the fall of the third dynasty of Ur, under which Babylon had been a provincial center, it became the nucleus of a small kingdom established in 1894 BCE by the Amorite king Sumuabum, whose successors consolidated its status. The sixth and best known of the Amorite dynasts, Hammurabi, 1792-50 BCE, conquered the surrounding city-states and raised Babylon to the capital of a kingdom comprising all of southern Mesopotamia and part of Assyria, northern Iraq. Its political importance, together with its favorable location, made it henceforth the main commercial and administrative center of Babylonia, while its wealth and prestige made it a target for foreign conquerors. Babylon remained a minor town and a small state until the reign of its sixth Amorite ruler, Hammurabi, during 1792 to 1750 BC. He conducted major building work in Babylon, expanding it from a small town into a great city worthy of kingship. A very efficient ruler, he established a bureaucracy, with taxation and centralized government. Hammurabi freed Babylon from Elamite dominance, and indeed drove the Elamites from southern Mesopotamia entirely. He then systematically conquered southern Mesopotamia, including the cities of Ishin, Larsa, Eshnunna, Kish, Lagash, Nippur, Borsippa, Ur, Uruk, Umma, Adab, Sippar, Rapik, and Eridu. His conquests gave the region stability after turbulent times, and coalesced the patchwork of small states into a single nation, and it is only from the time of Hammurabi that southern Mesopotamia acquired the name Babylonia. Hammurabi turned his disciplined armies eastwards and invaded the region which 1,000 years later became Iran, conquering Elam, Gutians, Lulubi, and Kassites. To the west, he conquered the Amorite states of the Levant, which is known as modern Syria and Jordan, including the powerful kingdoms of Mari and Yamhad. Hammurabi then entered into a protracted war with the old Assyrian Empire for control of Mesopotamia and dominance of the Near East. Assyria had extended control over much of the Hurrian and Hattans parts of southeast Anatolia from the 21st century BC, and from the latter part of the 20th century BC had asserted itself over the northeast Levant and central Mesopotamia. After a protracted struggle over decades with the powerful Assyrian kings Shamshi-Adad I and Ishme-Dagan I, Hammurabi forced their successor Mudashkur to pay tribute to Babylon circa 1751 BC. Giving Babylonia control over Assyria's centuries-old Hattans and Hurrian colonies in Anatolia. From before 3000 BC until the reign of Hammurabi, the major cultural and religious center of southern Mesopotamia had been the ancient city of Nippur, where the god Enlil was supreme. Hammurabi transferred this dominance to Babylon, making Marduk supreme in the pantheon of southern Mesopotamia. The city of Babylon became known as a holy city where any legitimate ruler of southern Mesopotamia had to be crowned. Hammurabi turned what had previously been a minor administrative town into a large, powerful and influential city, extended its rule over the entirety of southern Mesopotamia, and erected a number of impressive buildings. Babylonia, however, was short-lived. The empire fell apart after Hammurabi's death and reverted back to a small kingdom for several centuries. The Hammurabi Code of Laws, a collection of 282 rules, established standards for commercial interactions and set fines and punishments to meet the requirements of justice. Hammurabi's code was carved onto a massive, finger-shaped black stone stele or pillar that was looted by invaders and finally rediscovered in 1901. The black stone stele containing the Code of Hammurabi was carved from a single, 4-ton slab of diorite, a durable but incredibly difficult stone for carving. The text, compiled at the end of Hammurabi's reign, is less a proclamation of principles than a collection of legal precedents, set between prose celebrating Hammurabi's just and pious rule. Hammurabi's code provides some of the earliest examples of the doctrine of lex talionis, or the laws of retribution, sometimes better known as an eye for an eye. The 282 edicts are all written in if-then form. The edicts range from family law to professional contracts and administrative law, often outlining different standards of justice for the three classes of Babylonian society, which are the propertied class, freedmen and slaves. Ultimately, Hammurabi's empire did not last as it fell into decline after his death in 1750 BC. In 1595 BC, Mursili I, ruler of the Hittites, a people from Anatolia, sacked Babylon, bringing the rule of Hammurabi's successors to a close. The Hittites seized a statue of Marduk, who had become a principal god of the Babylonians, from his temple. Stealing the statue of Marduk from his own temple would have been seen as being extremely disrespectful by the Babylonians. In the chaos that followed, a people called the Kassites, also known as the Galzu, likely from the Zagros Mountains east of Babylon, came to power in Babylon around 1550 BC. They had access to good horses, giving them a military advantage. During this period, Babylonian writing may have become more professionalized and exclusive, but the language itself became widely used across the Middle East. It turned into a lingua franca for the whole Near East from the 15th to the end of the 13th century. Babylonian works could be found in Turkey, Syria, the Levant and Egypt. The period from roughly 1200 BC to 600 BC was a rocky one for Babylon, and involved many wars and some successes. Around 1200 BC, the Eastern Mediterranean faced calamity as a wave of migrants, sometimes called the Sea People, swept through much of the Middle East, destroying cities in Turkey and the Levant and contributing to problems that caused the breakup of ancient Egypt. While Babylon was not hit directly by the Sea People, they faced wars with other powers. A war with Assyria resulted in a Babylonian king being led to Ashur in chains, while a conflict with Elam led to the statue of Marduk being stolen yet again. A new Babylonian ruler named Nebuchadnezzar I, 1126 BC to 1105 BC, defeated Elam and brought the statue back once more. However, these successes were short-lived. Babylon struggled over the following centuries, and the Assyrians invaded again. The city was put under direct Assyrian rule from 729 BC to 627 BC. And during a Babylonian rebellion in 689 BC, the city was supposedly deliberately flooded, and the statues of its gods were seized or destroyed by the Assyrians. Babylon eventually broke free of Assyrian rule following a war waged by a king named Nabopolassar, and the Babylonians eventually conquered Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, in 612 BC. Nabopolassar's efforts brought Babylon into a new golden age. In 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar II, of biblical fame, ascended the throne, and he was in a strong position to build an empire. Through military conquests, Nebuchadnezzar II came to rule an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the borders of Egypt. He captured Jerusalem twice, in 597 BC and 587 BC. This events that led to the destruction of the First Temple, the deportation of many Jewish inhabitants to Babylonia and the capture of the Ark of the Covenant. In Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar II began a major building and reconstruction program. Babylon again starts to reach its greatest glory as a city during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II. At its heart were 14 different sanctuaries, and another 29 were distributed throughout the rest of the city. That was quite apart from the hundreds of street-side chapels and shrines. One of the biggest shrines, called Esagil, which is also known as Esagila, was dedicated to Marduk. It was located south of a great ziggurat, which is the temple tower, and measured 280 by 260 feet, with gateways 30 feet high. Nebuchadnezzar II lavished attention on the cult rooms as there were gold, silver and gemstones everywhere. Prior to Nebuchadnezzar II, much of Babylon was made of unbaked bricks, but during the rebuilding program, good baked bricks were widely used. These baked bricks would have appeared sturdier and had a somewhat different appearance. Nebuchadnezzar II's city boasted three major palaces. The southern palace measured 1,065 by 720 feet. It included a throne room with a glazed brick panel showing palmettes, floral reliefs and lions. The tiles were glazed in blue and yellow, which is a common feature among the most important structures in Nebuchadnezzar II's Babylon. George wrote, the king also had a northern palace, which was about 985 feet long on each side. Pedersen wrote, it had a series of terraces with a canal beside it. These terraces could have been used for planting trees and other vegetation, which is the possibly inspiring stories about a hanging garden of Babylon. Pedersen wrote, on the northern tip of the city's outer wall, Nebuchadnezzar II had another palace, known as the Summer Palace today. Built by Nebuchadnezzar II and named after Ishtar, a goddess of love and war, the Ishtar Gate served as the ceremonial entrance to the inner wall of Babylon and as a route that led to the ziggurat and Esagil shrine. People passing by it in antiquity would have seen glazed blue and yellow bricks with alternating images of dragons and bulls carved in relief. A reconstruction of it that incorporates surviving materials is currently in the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin. The amazing Ishtar Gate, composed of an ante-gate in the outer wall and the main gate in the larger inner wall of the city, with a 48-meter-long passage, was decorated with no fewer than 575 depictions of animals according to calculations made by excavators. It is noted that these pictures, of bulls and dragons, representing the holy animals of the weather god Adad and the imperial god Marduk, were placed in alternating rows. In addition, Martzahn wrote that a processional way ran through the Ishtar Gate and, for about 590 feet, had images of lions carved in relief. The mouths of the lions were open, baring their teeth, and the manes of the creatures were finely detailed. Every spring, the king, his courtiers, priests and statues of the gods traveled along the processional way to the Akkadu temple to celebrate the New Year festival. The dazzling procession of the gods and goddesses, dressed in their finest seasonal attire, atop their bejeweled chariots, began at the Esagila, the main gate of the Esagila, which is a temple dedicated to Marduk, and proceeded north along Marduk's processional street through the Ishtar Gate. Although largely destroyed today, in ancient times the ziggurat of Etemenanke, which roughly translates to the temple foundation of heaven and earth, it towered over the city, and was located just to the north of the Esagil shrine. Like the shrine, the ziggurat was dedicated to the god Marduk. The ancient Greek writer Herodotus, who lived in the 5th century BC, described Etemenanke as a solid tower that is 220 yards long and broad. A second tower rises from this and from it yet another, until at last there are 8. Herodotus wrote that in the last tower there is a great shrine, and in it stands a great and well-covered couch, and a golden table nearby, but no image has been set up in the shrine, nor does any human creature lie there for the night, except one native woman, chosen from all women by the god, as the Chaldeans say, who are priests of this god. Translation by A.D. Godley. Although the tower was initially constructed earlier in the city's history, Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar II ordered it to be rebuilt. When this was complete, the structure was about 300 feet in length, width and height. Pedersen wrote, "Rebuilding the structure would have been an impressive feat, and it's been speculated that this structure may have inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. The story of the tower may have taken its inspiration from the well-publicized repairs of Assyrian kings in the 7th century, Daly wrote, noting that the story of the tower also could have come from a Babylonian religious text known as the Epic of Creation. In 2011, an ancient stele, or inscribed stone, with an image of Nebuchadnezzar II was translated and published. In it, the king is shown standing beside the ziggurat. The artifact has been given the name the Tower of Babel stele. Babylon also supposedly featured spectacular gardens, known as the Hanging Gardens. Scholars don't know where the Hanging Gardens were in Babylon, or even if they really existed, but ancient writers describe them in detail. The gardens are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In about 250 BC, Philo of Byzantium wrote that the Hanging Gardens, the structure is so called because it is plants cultivated at a height above ground level, and the roots of the trees are embedded in an upper terrace rather than in the earth. This is the technique of its construction. The whole mass is supported on stone columns, so that the entire underlying space is occupied by carved column bases. Translation by David Oates. A later account was recorded by Greek historian Diodorus Siculus in the 1st century BC. He wrote that the Hanging Gardens were built by a later Syrian king to please one of his concubines, for she, they say, being a Persian by race and longing for the meadows of her mountains, asked the king to imitate, through the artifice of a planted garden, the distinctive landscape of Persia. Modern-day scholars have noted that Herodotus, who lived earlier than Philo, does not mention the Hanging Gardens. Moreover, there are no known Babylonian records of the site. Ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar II's empire didn't last much longer than the one built by Hammurabi. In the 6th century BC, the Achaemenid, or Persian Empire, rose to the east of Babylon and became so powerful that it would later invade territories as far west as Greece. The fall of the Babylonian Empire was very swift and occurred during the reign of Nabonidus, which lasted from 556 BC to 539 BC. At the start of Nabonidus' reign, the Babylonian Empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, and Nabonidus expanded it even further, capturing parts of what is now Saudi Arabia. Ancient records say he even chose to live at Tama, a city in what is now Saudi Arabia, until around 543 BC. An engraving depicting Nabonidus was found in Al-Hayt, in Saudi Arabia, in 2021. However, in the last years of his rule, the Babylonian Empire was attacked by the Persians and ultimately destroyed. Leake noted that on October 29, 539 BC, the city of Babylon fell to Cyrus the Great, the legendary Persian ruler. Nabonidus was taken to what is now Iran to spend the rest of his life in exile. In an ancient inscription called the Cyrus Cylinder, now housed in the British Museum in London, Cyrus claimed that his troops faced no resistance when he took Babylon. If there was a warm welcome for the Persians, it didn't last. From 528 BC to 526 BC, Babylon and the area around it was hit by a famine brought about by the failure of barley crops. Christian Kleber wrote in his 2012 journal Zeitschrift für Assyriologie und Vorderasiatische Archäologie. The workers who rebuilt the city wall of Babylon in the years 528 to 526 BC must have felt as though they were in the antechamber of hell, Kleber wrote, noting that ancient texts mention discontent among the Babylonians. However, Babylon would never be independent again. Over the following millennia, the city fell under the sway of several empires, including that of Alexander the Great, who died in Babylon in 323 BC, the Seleucids and the Parthians. When Alexander the Great captured Babylon in 331 BC, the ziggurat of Etemenanke had fallen into ruin. Alexander planned to rebuild it along with other sites in the city with a force of 10,000 men, Daly wrote. However, Alexander died, and his empire descended into civil war before the plan could be brought to fruition. Babylon was abandoned in the centuries thereafter. Under Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi government excavated Babylonian ruins and attempted to reconstruct certain features of the ancient city, including one of Nebuchadnezzar's palaces. After the 2003 invasion of Iraq, United States forces built a military base on the ruins of Babylon. The United Nations Cultural Heritage Agency UNESCO reported the base caused major damage to the archaeological site. The site was reopened to tourists in 2009. More recently, Islamic State Group, also called ISIS, ISIL or Daesh, forces failed to reach Babylon during their 2014 offensive in the region, and as such, the city was spared the destruction that befell other ancient sites occupied by the terrorist group. Groundwater has also been a problem at Babylon, and a proposal to use underground dams to lower and control groundwater at the site was published in 2015 by a team of scientists from the University of Babylon, in Iraq, in the International Journal of Civil Engineering and Technology. Okay guys, that is all for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell to receive the latest update from my channel. See you soon in another interesting video. Bye.